sort of imagine this whole movie project just very casual, very cozy. You know, we can talk about a lot of movies. We can talk about one movie. We don't even have to talk about. We can talk about TV shows.
I definitely have a lot to get off my chest movie-wise, so
Well,
it's been quite a year.
well, I think for this, this inaugural ep, while we're still trying to figure out what we're gonna do, let's just do it. Let's just do a big unload, because I think, it would be fun just to talk movies and not talk about anything else. So
sounds good, man.
So if this is kind of a 2021, I guess it's not a prospectus because it's we're looking back.
Yeah, it's an informal review because I'm still processing a lot of movies. There's still some movies I haven't seen from the year, and I think that's the whole thing with January, February. It's like a chance for you to catch up with a lot of movies from last year. But I think a lot of the big movies that I anticipated, I've already seen. There's probably only like a handful of minor movies I'm still waiting to catch up on. But
so before you dig in, are there any like general feelings or trends or things that you noticed from this last year?
It was a very mediocre movie year. That's my general impression. Like the phrase I probably said the most after leaving a movie theater was, well, I didn't need to see that again.
Yeah.
And sometimes they would be good movies too. It's not just like the bad movies. There were just a lot of movies that felt like they were good one-offs. But I think as I'm growing older, I'm trying to find those home runs. I want like the keepers, the movies that I can see myself going back to and watching again, because that's the value of movies to me, is their rewatchability and their and I feel like it's valid for a movie to be good, but you only need to see it once. But for the most part, that's what I look for when I'm like compiling like my favorite movies of the year. So this year I barely even have a top 5. I think maybe a top 4. So
okay, good.
I'm one short, so that's how I felt about this year.
Yeah, I sort of concur. I've probably seen maybe a fifth of the movies you've seen, but my general consensus is that, well, one, for my age, I'm now 40. I'm kind of through that kind of, I don't know if snarky is the right word, but just through that part of my life where I was super judgmental of movies, and like I can kind of enjoy them a little more for what they are. But even with that, there was a lot of movies that, just kind of like you said, like I could have died without having seen them.
All right.
But
yeah. And speaking of aging, that's the irony too. I feel like, 10 years ago, I was definitely at my peak of like film snobbery, but like I'm getting to the point now where I appreciate a movie for being flawed, and like those kind of things actually sometimes make the movie unique. So going back to like my top movies of the year, I actually had to tier it, where basically there's the movies that are top tier, and those are the 4 that I may bring up, and then there's ones that are like they were entertaining, but I still had problems with them, so those are the second tier. And then there's the third tier of just all right movies, and then the fourth tier is basically like the forgettable ones. And
okay, cool.
It's just like I have to log them because I saw it, so it's like that's I guess the T-shirt that you get. I saw this movie and I'm like, oh, what's this lousy T-shirt?
All I got was a Letterboxd. Something.
Yeah, a Letterboxd log.
Yeah. Like, where do you want to start? Do you want to start at the top or the bottom?
Let's start with the bottom. Okay. Yeah.
All right. So what you got?
The Fairly Forgettable. I like that alliteration. Ooh. Fairly Forgettable films.
Okay.
Yeah. So I have to say, one movie that was a big disappointment to me was this film called Rants. Okay. It's directed by Bruno Dumont, who I admire, but I hadn't seen a film of his in a while, because he kind of had an interesting career trajectory where his movies got really heavy and serious, and then he suddenly went into doing like ridiculous comedies and farces. And then he kind of came back to doing something serious, and then this is kind of falls in between. It's kind of a satire. It's It's about a newspaper reporter played by Leia Seydoux, who was like, I think, in 3 movies this year. And another one that was actually fairly forgettable was James Bond, No Time to Die. She was in that. But she was great in The French Dispatch, which I'll talk about later on. But yeah, so France, yeah, it was just I know it was a really long. That was the other thing too. I guess a trend of this year. A lot of movies were over 2 hours long this year. Like, man, it was fairly a slog. There's some where it was like I appreciated the time. I'll bring up one later on, but most of the time I'm like, movies don't need to be over 2 hours. Like they're just stuffing it with a bunch of stuff, and I don't know. I think it's the effect of prestige television where there's just a lot of filler, and movies seem to be doing the same thing. That's the trend that I'm seeing, but I don't necessarily feel like France had a lot of filler, but it was just that a lot of the stuff that was supposed to be emotional, I was just disconnected from it. So yeah, fairly disappointed. And I mean, I'll still watch the next movie that Bruno Dumont does, but just this is kind of a return to watching his films. I'm like, this doesn't bode well, but I do want to go back and watch some of the comedic stuff he's done.
Okay,
like I have friends, actually shout out to Marcus and Scott from Zebras in America. They're my favorite movie podcast, and I've been a guest on that podcast a couple of times. They're my friends in real life.
I've heard a couple,
and yeah, it's a fantastic show. And Marcus is a big fan of Bruno Dumont, and he really champions Slack Bay. So I kind of want to see that movie because he likes it so much.
Cool.
So yeah, that was one of them.
I'm ignorant to that filmmaker. Like, is there a movie that stands out, for someone, or that you would recommend for someone to start with to kind of get a sense of?
Yeah, well, the thing is, his early stuff is very hard to watch, but I guess his first film is a good entry point because
is it hard to watch because it's like lo-fi, or is it just like
they're hard to watch because he has a very austere style. Like the acting style is like he was kind of considered to be the successor to this French director Robert Bresson, who everybody holds up in high regard. I mean, I do too, but so his films are kind of like that. Like he uses a lot of amateur actors. And his first movie is called The Life of Jesus, and it's not about Jesus at all. I don't even think there's a character named Jesus in the movie.
These titles, these titles drive me nuts.
Right. So yeah, his first film, it was really like an arrival of a major filmmaker. Like you can feel like he's so sure. Because I mean, he kind of cut his teeth like editing and shooting industrial films for corporations and stuff. So it was like it's kind of like this thing of everything creative was being repressed, and like he found an outlet through his first film. So there's an energy to this film that's incredible, and it establishes what his later films were about. It's always set in this town in France. I'm blanking on the name, but it's a small town. And he uses locals as his actors. They're all amateurs. And his second film, though, both of these films are on Criterion Collection, by the way. His second film is my favorite film of his, which is very controversial. I think it won like a jury prize at Cannes the year it came out, and also won Best Actor for the lead, which most people aren't convinced whether he's actually playing a role or he's just playing himself. It's called Humanity. And a lot of people hate it because it's like a police investigation about murders. But like, a lot of it doesn't follow the steps of a police procedural. It's actually very clumsy for a police procedural. And then there's just scenes that happen, which, kind of, if you're not used to his wavelength and his approach, you might even find funny, like a character like walking in on, his friends having sex, and he has no reaction to it. So, that was disappointing.
So France is it's in the category of
fairly forgettable.
Okay. I like that. All right.
Yeah. Okay. So sticking with France, the country, and the filmmakers, one movie that everybody's been talking about it, and a lot of people are predicting it might win the best foreign film Oscar is Titane. Have you heard of it?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, so everybody's making a big deal
I can't
of
watch
this
it
film.
though. Like I've kind of scrubbed
Yeah,
through it and read all the synopses, but I'm too
yeah.
scared to actually watch it.
Yeah, definitely do not watch this with your kids. It's not, even though it is about like fatherhood and in a very
Yeah,
twisted way.
it's about
Um,
parenting in a way. Yeah,
yes,
I gotcha.
parenting. Yeah. And so it's made by Julia Ducarneau. I'm not sure if I'm butchering her name or not. And I saw her first film too, which a lot of people were also very fond of. It's called Raw.
Mm-hmm.
But I thought Raw was okay. But I went into this film like being optimistic, and it was actually, this was another pattern of a lot of movies I saw this year, where it's like there's a lot of movies that are 3/4 good, and then
Right.
it kind of just falls apart in the last act. And I would say even like this is only half good. It's not even 3/4 good.
Yeah.
Like, but I was on board. Like when there was this whole thing of this is one of my favorite things about watching movies, actually, and this is what I look for when I'm watching movies, not consciously, but when it starts to doing it and I'm aware of it, I'm just like, I'm on board with this, which is when you don't know what's going on. Like you're not aware. Like who is this person? Like, what is their relationship to these people? Like, I love that, in a
Right.
movie. And sometimes I wish most movies kind of maintain that air of mystery,
Yeah.
but a lot of them feel the need to, conclude it and stuff and maybe not disorient their audience. But I love being disoriented by movies.
Yeah.
So that's why I think the first maybe 20-30 minutes of the movie is so compelling. And it's another 2-hour movie, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, because you're in that space where you're not even sure. I don't even remember that much dialogue actually in
Mm-hmm.
the first few parts of the movie, the first opening. Um, but yeah, it's a shame because it really kind of starts to go downhill once they bring in Vincent Lindon, who's like an amazing actor. He's one of my favorite
Mm-hmm.
actors, and usually his presence in movies are great.
Right.
But in this one, oh man, I don't know like what kind of direction he was getting. It's a muddled performance,
Yeah.
and the movie becomes
And
muddled as
then,
well.
so is he the one who kind of plays the father figure who sort of
Yes,
adopts?
yes,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay.
So yeah, and yeah, it's trying to go for some black humor, but it just doesn't work. That's my issue with it. Like, there's a scene everybody talks about that happens later on in the movie. I mean, everybody talks about the car scene,
Right.
which but the scene later on where it's kind of I guess a gender fluid confusion scene
Right.
where because I mean we might as well spoil it for people who haven't seen it
Yeah.
and
They're
you
not gonna
haven't
watch
seen
it
it.
because of this.
Yeah, yeah, and or if you're a fan of this movie, you would go out and watch it yourself.
Exactly.
You've already seen it. Like it came out in August or something like that. But the whole thing is there's this scene where I guess I have to provide some context. So she basically disguises herself as the son, the missing son of Vincent Lindon. So she kind of alters her appearance. She shaves her eyebrows.
Mm-hmm.
She shaves her head, to kind of look more male. She tapes down her breasts. And then the most like gruesome part is like she breaks her nose, to look more
Mm-hmm.
masculine. So Vincent Lindon works with the fire brigade. He's a fireman, and I can't remember what they were celebrating. There was some sort of event that they were celebrating.
I saw this scene. I saw this
Yeah, and then
where they're having
so
a
she,
huge dance
yeah,
party.
yeah, and it's this kind of established in early on in the movie that she's like kind of a sexy dancer, that she dances on top of cars, I guess, at like weird underground car shows,
Yeah.
and so she starts dancing sensually, and all the firemen like have no idea what's going on. Like they're completely
Yeah.
confused because it's like, am I attracted to her
Yeah.
or him? And like,
Yeah.
so it plays up on that. But that was the part where I just gave up on the movie. I was just like, yeah, you lost me. And then I was just thinking
Mhm.
maybe it might salvage itself with the ending, but it didn't. So yeah.
Is the ending a bummer?
No, it's actually a happy ending.
Oh, all right.
Surprisingly enough, it's an
Okay.
ironic happy ending.
Way to go.
Yeah,
Titane.
yeah. So, I'm sure it's probably gonna win more awards,
Yeah.
but it's not
Yeah.
my vote.
From what I saw, it looks cool. Like the way it's shot, it looks really cool. The car scene you're talking about, I think, is the car scene where the lead character sort of has amorous feelings towards the automobile.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, and it actually impregnates her. So that's the
Yeah.
other thing that she's trying to suppress. She's trying to present as male, but she's also pregnant. So
Yeah.
she kind of has to cover up her belly as well.
I know, it's like it's almost you can kind of see Fast and the Furious somehow incorporating some of this ideas into like their upcoming.
I mean, I would love that
series.
if the series went into that direction. I
Yeah.
mean, it's gotten comparisons to David Cronenberg's Crash, which is a much better movie. If you're interested in that kind of twisted subgenre and like how it's actually able to stick to landing, like I feel like David Cronenberg's Crash, which came out in 96, so it's already 25 years old. That's a movie that's worth watching because I think it deals with these ideas in a more interesting way than Titane does. So
Well, I got to ask: all right? You don't have to say where it is, but is Fast 9 at anywhere in these categories?
I'm actually looking at my notes right now, and it's not even on the list.
Oh, okay.
I completely forgot that I saw it.
Okay, well, once we're through, I definitely want to talk about Fast 9 at some point.
Yeah, for sure, and because we actually saw it together, right?
That's right. Yeah, it was a great experience. Well, maybe let's just talk about it now because I mean,
let's
the actual. So this might be one of those movies that kind of falls in this weird in between where it's like we know it's not necessarily great, but it does fall in this kind of rewatchable, easy. It's a very easy to watch movie. You know what you're gonna get, kind of a movie. It's ridiculous. It's also it also delivers on your expectations, and just the experience we had of watching it in a theater in July. It was roughly right when it came out, like pretty close to the premiere, and how our family we filled out. We did sort of a game where we had to guess at what point in the movie Dom would talk about family. He somehow just
mentions the word family. Yeah,
mentions the word family, and so we had it. I think we had it broken down from. First 10 minutes, minute 10 to 20, first half hour, etc.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until it was probably 2 hours and 20 minutes. So again, another
whoever picked the last one got
whoever picked the last one got it. And it wasn't Dom, it was young Dom in a flashback said it. And I remember we all stood up and cheered. We were so happy.
Were waiting for it because the movie really does tease you with it because other people say it. Other characters do, and you're waiting for him to say it.
Yeah.
And then, of course, it's a different iteration of him. And I mean, we should also point out that we had a family-only screening. Like, this is kind of, I guess, symbolic of the pandemic that this theater was rented out by my dad for his birthday. And it was all just family. Nobody else, no strangers were in the theater. It was just all us.
It was nice. It was July. We all felt safe. It was really easy. It felt good to be around each other, and it was a good movie to pick just because it's so silly. Right. I mean, my favorite scene. It's still a scene I think about to this day. Is when Licorice and Tyrese, I think, or they drive a car in space through a satellite, and they survive, and they kind of save everything. It's just one of those scenes that. While it's happening, it's so ridiculous, but then when they drive, it actually kind of pays off. Like, I actually got excited about it.
Yeah. And, all they needed was duct tape, right? That was the secret.
Exactly. And so it's like, how do you even, is it a parody at this point? Like, is it,
right?
Has the Fast and Furious franchise gone from starting off as Scream and ending up as Scary Movie? Has it become its own self-parody?
It's hard to tell. Enough to be your own parody.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I'm curious because I would actually be down to direct a Fast and the Furious movie, but they
Oh
would have to give
yeah.
me carte blanche. Like, I mean, I'm sure I was like, I have to have some sort of canon or continuity bits, but like, I want to be able to just do it as see fit,
Like
and just like let
like
me make my weird Fast and the Furious movie.
yeah, is there a storyline or a subplot that you have in mind already?
Um, Not really. I mean, it would involve a heist, but I think
Yes.
it's more about my approach to it. Like, I don't want to write the script to it. I just want to take like one of the cookie cutter scripts and then
Yeah.
use that as like a jumping off point for what I want to do and just take it to like
Hmm.
crazy places.
Yeah.
And there's still going to be car chases and stunts, but I'm going to do it my way. So, yeah.
Well,
So
awesome.
if any of the producers of Fast and the Furious are hearing this,
Yeah.
sign
Yeah.
me up.
Yeah. Well, if I win a lottery, I'll fund it. So yeah.
Hell yeah, let's
Hell
do it.
yeah.
It's 500 million right now
Ooh, okay.
on Powerball. Yeah.
Okay. We can do that.
Um. Yeah.
All right.
So yeah, I don't really want to spend too much on the fairly forgettable movies
Yeah.
because then I'm
Let's move
trying to
on.
remember them. Yeah. So let's do the all right tier, which is probably the biggest tier for me.
Okay.
Like there were a lot of all right movies I think this year. Um, one recent one which I we've been texting about and was gonna be the subject of our podcast initially was the Matrix, the fourth Matrix movie.
Let's get into it.
And all right, okay, so yeah, let me hear what you because I haven't heard what
Okay.
your thoughts are on the movie. So
So we rewatched the original Matrix the day before we watched the new one. Just to kind of
nice,
get a refresher. And
sure.
it's the rewatch of the Matrix is so great. It's
Hmm.
so fast. It's so well paced, and they accomplish. They get across all the complicated plot points in a way that's smooth. You kind of get it, or you can kind of figure it out later. It all makes sense essentially by the time you get to the end. And Keanu Reeves and Carrie-Anne Moss have so much chemistry. Like the whole time you're just like rooting for them to hook up. You can like feel it. And
Okay.
so my experience watching The Matrix Resurrections was really I could have watched the whole movie could have just been them, Keanu Reeves and Carrie-Anne Moss talking in that cafe.
Right.
And just kind of feeling those vibes and kind of trying to remember their romance and kind of having that it's kind of like moonlighting in a way where it's just like there's tension but they can't act on it just because the other storylines I felt like were jammed in. They were really confusing. It was really confusing trying to understand all the different programs in this new Matrix. Like,
Hmm.
so it seemed like Jonathan Groff's character and Neil Patrick Harris's character were sort of advanced programs, but one could do more than the other, and it was really unclear,
Right.
what rules they were all kind of abiding by.
Hmm.
And then ultimately, when you get to the end, and then there's the big fights, and then at the end they kind of come back and revisit Neil Patrick Harris's character. I don't know. It just didn't feel very impactful, or it didn't feel like a conclusion. It just
Hmm.
felt messy and like I was already sort of checked out, and I just wanted more of Neo and Trinity, but I don't think it was
Gotcha.
possible.
Yeah, and for me, I actually am coming from another perspective that I didn't feel their chemistry. Like
Oh,
maybe a little more in this movie, but in the original trilogy, I didn't feel it at all. Like I was kind of bored by that storyline. Actually, I mean, for me, Matrix was really all about the ideas that it was
yeah.
presenting. Like that's what fascinated me about it, and of course the memorable action. And I'm a fan of the first two movies, and I definitely dropped off on the third one, even though I do kind of want to revisit it because it does feel like the third one. I want to know which is worse, basically, the
Yeah,
third one or the fourth.
right.
Because yeah, they're both kind of I guess them going overboard. Even though this time around it's only Lana Wachowski. Lily declined to be part of it, and you can understand why. but there's a lot of like meta
Mm-hmm.
things going on in this movie, and I just in Matrix Resurrections,
Yeah.
and I just don't think it you can take it seriously. Even the filmmakers themselves are not taking it seriously. And I'm a big fan of Lana Wachowski and her work, and David Mitchell, who she got as a co-writer on this project, because he's an amazing author. I love his books like Ghost Written and Cloud Atlas, and he's also written some episodes of Sense8, the Wachowskis' Netflix show. And yeah, he's brilliant. He definitely has talent and he has these ideas, but there was no execution with these ideas. I was actually another movie that I was on board for it for like maybe the first third or so, until it started revealing that it's like, oh, this is all fake. I wanted it to kind of be a new story, and for it to be like, well, what if the other Matrix was just a video game? Like it wasn't. It's not just an illusion that was presented to Neo to kind of convince him of his new life. Because those moments, like you were saying, you like the cafe scene. I like that montage where he's just like going through his life, where he's eating a steak, or being depressed in the bathtub with the rubber ducky on his head.
Yeah.
Those kind of moments I enjoyed. And this is where I kind of am conflicted with the movie, because there's things that I admire about it, and I don't mind that they're presenting something new. Like I wasn't really expecting it to be a new Matrix and it was gonna top like the previous movies. That is like, this is the reason why we had to bring it back. Like once I started to understand that the goal was like, okay, we're making fun of the studio, because it even alludes to it in one scene where Keanu or Neo meets his boss Smith, played by Jonathan Groff, where he says like, they're gonna do the sequel whether you like it or not. So it's like, it's that attitude of basically Lana Wachowski feeling, I feel like, okay, if you're gonna destroy my property, I want to do it my way. Instead of you like taking some hack director to do it. And I mean, there's still some interesting ideas at play, but yeah, everything is done in just like kind of a half-hearted way, because that's really it. Like it feels like they didn't want to do this, but Warner Brothers is going to push ahead with it regardless. And it's like, okay, well, let's just have fun with it, because there's no memorable action. Maybe one sequence that sticks out in my head was the bike chase sequence, just because of those people getting taken over and starting to drop on them. Yeah, like that's the only action sequence that really sticks in my head, but everything else was very generic, and I think probably on purpose. Like
that scene in particular, when the people were falling out of the buildings, intentionally, that was pretty jarring. I remember like thinking sort of in a post 9/11 kind of vibe, that's like, this feels a lot heavier than it would have been in 99, seeing something like that.
Because I mean, even that was the other thing. I remembered the release of the Matrix like coinciding in 99 with the Columbine massacre, so it was still a discussion point in terms of violence and what we see. Even though I think it came out in the summer of 99, so Columbine happened just before, so there couldn't have been any April. So but still, like, that was a discussion point, and especially like Rammstein was on the soundtrack, and the two shooters listened to Rammstein, so there was all these things back then. So but I think that wasn't really intentional on either case, but it did. Some movies do evoke that, but it's just I don't know. And then I guess another irony of them kind of burning the house down with this movie was it actually opens itself to more sequels.
Like, I know, right?
Yeah. Like it ends on a point where it's like, okay, now we have this continuing battle, but now they're awake again, and now there's two ones.
Right. And so it's like, I think for me, it had been so long that I think I got really excited for this new Matrix in a way that I hadn't been in a long time. And I think I was hoping for it to be something that it probably couldn't actually have been, because they've already made 2 sequels to The Matrix that weren't as great as the first one.
Yeah.
So expecting anything different was probably foolish on my end. So I think, if they're going to continue the storyline, it's sort of, I have to kind of just put my head into a different place. Of
right.
Like, okay,
yeah. I mean,
like,
I think, that's the shock for most people.
Yeah.
Like, that's why every time I mean, most people, the general consensus I'm getting is that everybody hates it. And that's always the thing that I catch, is that that adjustment that you need to make for this movie, because you're in the mode still of the old trilogy, and it's not part of that trilogy anymore. It's like kind of peripheral to it,
right.
It's completely outside of it. So
like, I just think this one in particular, it maybe had one too many new elements, or maybe two too many new elements. Like, they maybe didn't need Neil Patrick Harris and Jonathan Groff, or they didn't need as many of the new sort of crew that was part of getting Neo and Trinity out of the Matrix.
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely the point where the movie lost me, was when they had to go on that mission to rescue Trinity. I was just like, okay, where is this going? Like, it's kind of, it's getting started again.
Right. And then I think, just going back to like your original ideas of like what are the ideas they're trying to get across, that they did so well in the first series, or in the first installment. They definitely seem like, with the first trilogy and then this new one, there's a real emphasis again on just like on love. And like, and sometimes it just like, it kind of falls flat, because it's kind of in every movie. But then the other, I guess, a big idea that they're trying to get across is that you're never not in the simulation. You're never not
right.
It's never not happening.
Yeah. Because I mean, that was really what drew me in to like watching a new Matrix movie. Was I was just curious how it was gonna deal with these ideas of how we're operating today, because we've been talking about VR, I think, in the general discussion for a long time now, and there's now these discussions that VR is already here. It's like, when you're treating like your experience on social media as a real thing, like, especially Twitter, which is one of those toxic places, and like, that forces you to quit, or worse, that's really it. It's like, it always reminds me of the what is it, the Tyler the Creator quote, where he says that cyberbullying doesn't exist because all you need to do is close your eyes. And that's really it. Virtual reality is here, but those ideas aren't really explored enough, I feel, in the movie, even though the trailer kind of alludes to it, like especially that sequence where he's in the elevator and everybody's on their phone. I really thought it was going to explore that, of like how everybody's just connected to their devices in that way. But it didn't even go that route. So
and just going back to like something like Twitter and even Instagram, so many of the comments are generated by bots or things that aren't there.
Followers as well. Yeah.
So there's so everyone's so your follower count is inflated. The messages you're seeing are, your brain registers it as from a person, but it's probably not. And so it's like it would be nice. I mean, it would be difficult to do in a movie, but somehow to thread that needle to tie in what's happening in the Matrix with all the bots and the AI with something that's tangible in our current predicament. But I also get that, that's a tough needle to thread there.
Right. Yeah. And I mean, I think also, it just falls in between two stools. Like, I don't think the humor hit the mark either. Yeah. Especially with these new characters that work in the game dev.
Annoying. Yeah.
Yeah, and like that's something that wasn't in the original movies. Like, probably the closest character that was like that was the I'm blanking on his name. The kid who creates the lady in the red dress.
Right.
Where he he's kind of a fan as well, and he's part of the crew.
Yeah.
But they really exaggerate it. And like what really hammered it home, which I always bring up to me, like why I think this fourth Matrix is a joke, is the ending, where one, it uses a really terrible cover of Rage Against the Machine's Wake Up.
That was offensive. I did not appreciate that cover.
Yeah, that, and then it has a post-credit scene. Did you see the post-credit scene?
Yeah. What was it again? I did see it.
It goes back to the meeting that the developers, the game developers are having, and they talk about like cat matrix, like creating a cat matrix, and it's like, it's terrible.
It feels somewhat like self-sabotage,
Mm-hmm.
like and maybe that's just what it is. Like maybe it's moved into that Fast 9 category where it's just like we're doing half parodies of the original Matrix and just enjoy it,
Right. Well, we'll see. Like it feels like it's still in between, and I don't know. I mean, I'll still probably watch the next one. I'll still give it another chance.
Of course.
you know. But we'll see. Maybe the Wachowskis might not even be involved in the next few movies. Who knows? But yeah, like
probably Ryan Johnson's Matrix or something like that.
Oh my God! All right, that one I'm definitely avoiding.
J.J.
Abrams Matrix, yes. No, but I will just say the reason why I admire it is because I guess I approach it from the perspective of being a creator of something, and like giving up that that reign that you have on your creation, and because it wouldn't have been possible without this massive studio backing you. And a lot of people, this is their perspective on the Wachowskis anyway, which is that because they've basically been able to make whatever movies they wanted after the Matrix trilogy, and they've done some pretty original work. But people are thinking, well, that's just basically them kind of like Warner Brothers owes them something because they made them so much money with the Matrix movies, but then there's this whole thing of like, well, do you want to just be associated with this? Like it's kind of like you want to cut yourself from what you're recognized for, because you want to move on. Like there's other things that you're interested in, and you're not all about that one creation you created 20 years ago.
I know.
So I understand that aspect of it.
Yeah, it takes a special kind of, maybe narcissism is not the right word, but something in that realm where it's like there's an alternative universe where the Wachowskis just doubled down on the Matrix and created like a Disneyland style Matrix land and just like totally made it merchandisable, and you can go and you can fly around or we're living in this universe. So when it came out in like where were you in 99? Like when it came out?
I was in the Philippines at that time, and I was like seeing all this promotion for it on MTV, so I was really hyped to go see it because like the bullet time stuff, like all of that was just something I'd never seen before. And then I mean the soundtrack, like a lot of those bands I listened to at that time. So like we mentioned Rage, Rammstein, Rob Zombie, Deftones as well. Oh man, so it had all these great bands on the soundtrack. So I was totally down, like I was totally on board. And I remember though I was a little disappointed by the ending because it was left open-ended, when he flies away.
Right.
And I'm surprised to hear other people saying like, oh yeah, no, that was the perfect ending, like you could have ended it there. And I was like, no, it really opened itself up to sequels by ending it that way.
Right.
I
remember some people thought it was unclear who he was talking to on the phone at the end.
Sure.
I assume he's talking to the machines, but
right. Yeah.
I remember being pretty hyped and then going to see it with a friend and like just being blown away, loving it. And then I turned to my friend. I was like, "What do you think?" And she says something to the effect of, "It was awesome. I don't understand it. Can you explain it?" So it's like, I had to backtrack because I think to some it probably did go over their heads at the time. But,
I mean, I wasn't even aware of Baudrillard at the time and the idea of the simulacra and the simulation. Like all of that went over my head too. Like the idea of reality. I mean, I'd always been fascinated by it because I guess I'm just preoccupied with this idea that, you know, like there's this gulf between dreams and reality, and like how film is basically that gulf, you know, that you can present something that looks and feels real, but it's not, you know, and that's what my dreams are. They're basically movies. So so yeah, those ideas fascinate, but I had no idea about the academic aspects, which are hammered home by the third one. I mean, you know, the whole Zion Council, and then they even have Cornel West there discussing ideas. You know, it's just like, I mean, it was, and it's funny because it also came out the same summer that Phantom Menace came out, you know, in '99, and so the Star Wars trilogy was like restarting as well, and that was one of the criticisms of that trilogy, was that there were too many Jedi Council meetings, and then you got it in the Matrix as well, which was like everybody was saying was the new Star Wars. You know, it was like the Star Wars for our generation. You know. So
okay, well, I think so what category officially is Matrix Resurrection?
I would say it's all right, because I still feel like it's worth a revisit, and especially like having time to process. I'm glad actually we're recording it this episode a week after I don't know, now 2 weeks after I saw it, because I saw it on Christmas Day. But had we had this podcast on the 27th that we originally planned, like I would have probably just hated it completely. And, you know, but now that I've had time to process it, like I feel like I can revisit it. And my friend that I mentioned from Zebras in America, Scott, he's a much bigger Wachowski's fan than I am. Like he's stuck with them through all of these movies, and he even loves Jupiter Ascending, which I haven't seen, but I'm kind of trepidatious about. But I would love to have a conversation with him about it, because maybe he might have some sort of perspective that it might enlighten me about this film. So I would definitely come back to it, and you know, and I just want to skim through. This is the all right category. I just want to skim through them, and then if there's any ones that you want to talk about in depth, then we can. So the other big movie of this year, obviously, and I mean, probably the biggest movie of the year in terms of box office, was Spider-Man: No Way Home. So I thought that was all right. Did you see that?
I have not seen it, but
it's
in the queue.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Yeah. I mean, it was all right. So Nightmare Alley, also all right.
Okay.
Suicide Squad, The Suicide Squad. Did you see that?
No, did not miss that one.
Okay. So I think it's back on HBO Max, so you can probably watch it again.
Okay.
But yeah, that was actually enjoyable, and that's another one that I think, you know, I would, if it was on TV, I would watch it. You know, it's like it has some memorable parts in it. I don't want to spoil it for you, but there were some enjoyable bits. The Card Counter, which is the new Paul Schrader film. I do feel though Oscar Isaac should deserve some recognition for his role in this movie, because he was really good in it.
Okay.
So it's one of those performances that like kind of is better than the movie itself. And I actually like Tiffany Haddish in it as well. Like a lot of people were like, what is she doing in this serious movie as a kind of a romantic interest too? But I thought she was actually pretty good.
Oh, good.
And then Pig, which, you know, I think Nicolas Cage will garner some, you know, a lot of people love Pig. And I saw it twice, and the thing was, I liked it the two times that I watched it, but the longer it kind of stayed with me, I was just, it was just an all right movie. Like, I don't want to see it again, you know, but it you know where it's going. It's just, it doesn't work as much, you know. Last Duel, which nobody saw. It was a big box office bomb, but you know, I still appreciated it. I like Jodie Comer a lot. She's in another movie I'll mention later that I really
What
liked.
kind of a movie is it?
Last Duel is like a medieval drama, but it kind of touches upon Rashomon, in the sense that there's this event that happens, and it plays out through the different perspectives of the people involved.
Cool. Yeah.
yeah, so I thought that was really well done, and yeah, yeah, again, it was just like I don't really need to see that again, you know.
Right.
It was entertaining for that one time I saw it, but like
Yeah.
yeah, and then also kind of medieval and religious was Benedetta, which was also a really fun
Yeah.
viewing experience. But again, yeah, I just don't need to see it again. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a that's a movie that I've heard talked about on other podcasts as kind of being an underrated and really good film.
Yeah, I
At
mean, a
least
lot of
at
people
least
like it,
worth
and
seeing.
yeah, and I love Paul Verhoeven, so I'll see anything he does. You know, and I actually rewatched RoboCop within the same week. Yeah, so because it's funny how that's one of the movies that they still like herald from the director of RoboCop. And I'm like, man, this movie was like almost 40 years ago, and yeah, that's the movie that he's still known for. You know,
that's how it goes.
Yep. So yeah, let's move on to the next category, which is the movies that I really enjoyed, but you know, I had like quibbles, qualms about.
Okay.
So
wait,
mentioning. Oh no, go ahead.
Before we get going, can we take a pee break?
Yeah, go ahead.
All right, cool.
No problem. All right.
And we're back. I was thinking like maybe like Philippi time, something like that.
I don't know about that.
Yeah, okay.
Oh man.
We'll find it. We'll figure it out. All right.
Sponsored by no one.
Yeah. But I definitely hope, you know, if anyone's listening, please, during the pee breaks, take your own pee break. Remember to hydrate. It's kind of a health and wellness kind of a vibe, along with a movie vibe.
Yep, definitely. Take care of yourselves.
That's right. Mm-hmm. All right. So we were just getting into this new category.
Yes. Actually, I want to say what my formal title for it is.
Okay.
Which is troublesome but really enjoyed.
Ooh.
So that's so I had some issues with them, and I you know, I can give them at least like all one-liners unless you want to discuss them in.
So overall, after seeing it, you're like, you know what, I enjoyed that, but these couple things I gotta kind of nail them down.
There's always like this flaw, and you know, I guess it's contradicting what I said about like appreciating movies with flaws, but I guess. There's just some flaws that you can't get past, you know, where it's just, man, like, you know, it just, you get tripped up by it. So
I like it.
Just to tie in with the last Duel and Jodie Comer, she was in another movie, and it also ties into the Matrix, because I feel like the ideas that they were trying to get across in the Matrix, this movie did a lot better, which is Free Guy. Have you seen Free Guy?
No.
This was a movie that I was like sick of the trailer all year. Like every time it came on, I was just like, man, I hate this trailer. Like I can't wait for this movie to come out so I don't have to see this trailer anymore. And then I watched it, and then I was pleasantly surprised. Like I really enjoyed it.
Like what genre is it? Like
it's a comedy / action movie. It's with Ryan Reynolds. It's basically like Ryan Reynolds is an NPC in a video game who kind of becomes sentient.
Oh, right. Okay.
And so there is some Matrix parallels there, you know, and it's him kind of having this awakening and then realizing the power that he has, you know, and it's totally predictable fluff. You know exactly where it's going, but the way it gets there is really fun. You know, it's good natured. Yeah. And, I mean, I've heard a lot of objections to the movie that I don't disagree with, which is that, you know, it's a commercial product and it's kind of fulfilling this whole thing of, you know, keeping us in this system of consuming and, you know, all of these things. But like I feel like actually as a state of you know, the zeitgeist, it's actually pretty accurate, you know. And being a gamer myself, even though I'm not a hardcore gamer, like I felt like there were a lot of things that spoke to me in the movie. And yeah, I really enjoyed it a lot.
Yeah, and I mean, and it's a very just topical sort of subject. You know, a lot of people in the zeitgeist talk about NPCs, and you know, they use it as a pejorative. You know, to kind of make fun of it, like, oh, I'm awake, but you're an NPC, or you know, whatever it is. So you know, and so a movie that just kind of can accomplish just getting that idea out in a way that's entertaining is probably a net benefit, just to kind of.
Yeah. And again, like, the studio that like destroyed this year was really Disney, and it's a Disney movie. But I think it's definitely at least a PG-13 movie. So it does a lot of things that I don't think Disney would have, because I think it was originally a 20th Century Fox movie, and we're in this weird kind of thing now where I think Disney doesn't know what to do with its 20th Century Fox properties, because they just acquired Fox in order to get X-Men and unify their Marvel dominance, but yeah, all these Fox properties now, they don't know what to do with them. So I'm glad that this one, even though it could have fallen between the cracks, it actually, it really worked. It was a really enjoyable movie. And yeah, I do like that Mariah Carey song, I have to admit, fantasy.
Yeah, I mean, like there's not a lot of singers like her anymore. Like I was just trying to think about that, like just like a crazy range pop star who's also respected sort of across the gamut,
Yeah, because there was a remix of Fantasy I remember with ODB, and that wasn't heard of too. Like, you have this kind of wholesome, clean cut, like incredible voice, and then you have ODB, and just that contrast of that remix is incredible, and I don't think that's that's something that you wouldn't see today, So yeah, Free Guy, really enjoyable.
Cool. Like is it kind of in the vein, like you mentioned PG-13? Is it kind of in the vein of like a Back to the Future or something, where it's like it's kind of edgy but it's wholesome?
Yeah, I would say so. It's definitely got the it toes the line basically. There's definitely a lot of innuendo, stuff like that. And the violence is fairly bloodless, but you get to see you see people getting shot in the head and stuff like that. So yeah,
unavoidable.
Yeah, and then next movie that is in this category is this movie called Violet, which I know also hardly anybody saw, because I couldn't even find it in the theater. Like I had to find other ways to see it. But yeah, it's a directorial debut of Justin Bateman, who is the sister of Jason Bateman, and they were on a sitcom together. I can't remember the title because I never saw it. But she was also
Bateman was on speaking of Back to the Future, I think she was in that show with Michael J. Fox.
Was it that show?
Which was, of course, and it's skipping my brain, but not was it? Was that wasn't Growing Pains, right? No, the one
I was thinking of Growing Pains, but that's isn't that Kirk Cameron?
Yeah, that's Kirk Cameron. Oh God. Okay.
Yeah. Well,
people know. That famous '80s sitcom with Michael J. Fox and Justine Bateman.
Yeah. So Justine Bateman, she's interesting because she was one of those really attractive actresses when she was younger, and I feel like the machine has like taken her in and then spat her out again, and I'm glad that she's found another role outlet, basically as a director, because her movie is very original. It stars Olivia Munn, and Olivia Munn basically works for like a production company in Hollywood. Okay. And it's all about like Olivia Munn's her character named Violet, who is experiencing a lot of anxiety and like kind of psychogenic fugue, like, and it has all these experimental elements in it, which I really loved. It was just such a unique and original, I think, first film, and I can just tell that Justin Bateman really wants to try different things, and I hope she continues on that path. Cool. Like, I really think that her next movie should be like that. But, the nitpicky part of me, which is why this movie is not top tier, is that it has like a really forced, like, happy ending. Which is, I guess I'm spoiling for people, but yeah, I felt like it didn't need to go in that direction. I won't dwell on the specifics because then people will know. But it's just this whole thing of like, I guess if we're talking about a girl boss character, like, I just don't think she would I they deserve to be happy, but I think from what I've heard of anecdotal evidence, like being a girl boss is not as rewarding
Right.
as as
Sure.
the movie concludes.
Right.
But yeah, Olivia Munn's great in it. I mean, she should get some awards recognition for her
Cool.
performance too.
Cool.
And yeah,
Is this the kind of film where you think Justine Bateman will get some recognition?
I hope so. You know, like it'd be great if this is like the next period in her career, because you know, I mean, very different filmmaker, but I'm also thinking of a parallel career being like Ron Howard. You know how Ron Howard was this
Sure.
fresh-faced kid, and then he started losing his hair, and then he started turning to directing. You know, so it's a similar thing where, you know, I mean, Justin Bateman, if you've seen her, her looks have definitely faded. You
Sure.
know, and I'm not being like deliberately offensive. It's just like she doesn't look the same way
Ageist.
that she
Yeah.
used. Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
exactly. But you know, it was just really a fascinating film because I'm sure a lot of I mean, one of the things that comes
Mhm.
up often in the film is the sexual harassment that Violet has to deal with, and I'm sure
Yeah.
that's based on her experience of dealing with Hollywood types, you know. So
Yeah.
and then yeah, uh, growing older too. So yeah, definitely. I hope she continues, and yeah, it will go a long way actually if she does get awards recognition because
Nice.
you know having nominations always
Yeah.
will convince money
Yeah.
people. So
And and it does seem like the inner workings of production companies and and like just that whole world is both a topic that's both ripe for stories, and then it's in the zeitgeist right now. Like
yeah.
everyone is kind of aware of how, well, everyone's been aware of how sleazy it is, and
Mhm.
it's now at the time where it's like, okay, we can
Right.
actually kind of show it and maybe not offend the studio heads, because hopefully they're
Mhm.
now just they're because they're aware of what's happening now.
Right. Right. Exactly. So yeah, Violet, highly recommended.
Nice.
Next movie is The French Dispatch. Have you seen that?
No.
Yeah, that's Wes Anderson's latest movie.
Yeah.
And I'm hot and cold with Wes Anderson, you know.
Yeah.
I think I really dropped off when he made the Darjeeling Limited. Like I really dislike that movie a lot.
Sleepy.
Um yeah.
Yeah.
But he yeah, he's now made two movies in a row that I've really enjoyed because I really like his previous film before this one, Isle of Dogs.
I like that one.
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, I like yeah, that was one of my top movies of that year.
Hmm.
And this is great because you know, it's a lovely tribute to the New Yorker. And uh, great cast. I mean, you know, not all the stories are equal, and I, you know, again, the nitpicky part is that some story, because it's three main stories in the magazine. The entire movie's formatted like a magazine, so you know, you have
Oh,
the
okay.
editorial at the beginning, and then the little feature, and then the three featured stories.
Nice.
And yeah, I would say two of the three are really good, and then the middle one is the one where I kind of lose interest a little bit.
Right.
Um, but yeah, Wes Anderson kind of gets ragged on for making the same movie over and over
Uh-huh.
again with the same style that can be parodied, but he's actually trying different things in this movie. Like there's a lot of experiments with black and white and color, which I really enjoyed, and then uh even just the screen size, like the format of the screen, like it, most of the movie is in that boxy 4:3 aspect
Hmm.
ratio, but sometimes like when the shot calls for it, he'll do a
Oh,
widescreen shot,
great.
16:9. And then uh and then there's also incorporating animation, which is
Hmm.
great, and like how that ties into the magazine is very clever because you know how magazines, sometimes articles will have like
Oh,
a
yeah.
cartoon or
Yep.
something portraying part of the story. So I thought that was just really well done, and obviously like the colors, the design,
Yeah.
it was well made. But that's just really it. Like I felt like the middle story of the movie wasn't as compelling as the first and the third
Hmm. Cool.
story. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. I mean, like, at the end of the day, all of his movies are just great art pieces, and so it's just like,
Sure.
I'm definitely like
Yeah.
we're all, they all have a certain look, and it's
Right. Yeah. And I
you know
mean, I this would definitely be a movie that I wouldn't mind owning on Blu-ray and rewatching. I have certain Wes Anderson films that are like that for me, like Rushmore. I have I
Yeah.
Love Dogs, and then I also have Moonrise Kingdom. Those are probably my favorite Wes Anderson movies, the ones that I own on Blu-ray.
Yeah. I
So
concur.
yeah. Okay, so probably the one that would shock people the most, those who know me, that I a movie that I really enjoyed, and I actually saw this with JR, and he hated it. Was Voyagers, which was actually one of the first movies I saw this year. I think it was like early in spring.
Wow.
I saw this movie. It was like the first new release. Because I mean, I guess we should contextualize how movie going was this year. Like a lot of movie theaters didn't actually reopen until March. So there were a lot of movies out theaters that were still closed. So I was still watching movies at home.
Yeah.
So I think that might have been the first movie that I saw back in the theater. At least it was the first movie that was a new release, because I remember too they were carrying over some of the releases, just to kind of let them have some theatrical life. But Voyagers was the first like official 2021 movie that I saw.
Why did JR hate it?
For reasons that I understand, which are that it's how would I describe it? It can be predictable, and also like it doesn't really give you any way in. Like you could dislike all of the characters in this film, like you can be at a distance from it the whole time. But to me that was organic to the movie, because the basic premise of it is they go on a mission into space where it's gonna take years, so it might take a couple of generations to get there. And that's always like a thought experiment I've been fascinated by in terms of space travel, is like how can we like reach the depths of space when age is our limit, and especially like you need full grown adults to travel into space and to have that mental fortitude to be able to travel in space. So more than likely, like the youngest people you'll get are like in their 20s. And what if the journey takes like 50, 60 years, to get to and then there's no return. You're just going to be out there for the rest of your life and live on a space station. So the movie entertains that idea, which is basically that they have one adult who goes on the mission, which is played by Colin Farrell, and he basically has all these synthetic babies that he takes with him, and they all have like a program where the educational program, there's like a fluid that they take that kind of sedates them. So all the performances by the young actors as they grow up are very deadpan, which I liked, and I thought they really nailed it. Like the younger cast is like Ty Sheridan, who was also in Card Counter. I like him. And Lily Rose Depp, who's Johnny Depp's daughter. And the third guy was in Dunkirk, Fionn Whitehead. So all of them were really good. And yeah, I something about it, like I guess maybe even just the rush of being back in the movie theater again. I just really enjoyed it. It was,
did the movie have good atmosphere? Like the set and the pacing?
I'd never seen a movie by this director before, Neil Burger. But I know the memes from Limitless, which is funny. Which he made with Bradley Cooper. So that's basically my experience from Neil Burger films. I've never seen anything he's done, but no, I liked it a lot. I thought it was very well done. It had good production. The cinematography was really beautiful.
Good.
And I just have a soft spot for movies set in space anyway. So and just the fact that it is this taking to the conclusion, this idea, this thought experiment of what it would take to travel to the far depths of space, like I thought was interesting.
What are some of your favorite space movies?
I mean, Alien, of course.
Yeah.
One of the big ones. One that I love, which we could discuss on a separate episode, because I'd love for you to see it, is The American Astronaut by Corey Maccabee.
Okay.
Which is like this crazy like rock
I'll write that one
sci-fi musical. And yeah, it's kind of hard to find, so I might have to like send you a copy of it.
Okay.
I have it on DVD.
Cool. The American
Um,
Astronaut. Okay.
yeah, even the DVD is like so overpriced. Like I was lucky to find that was like around $30.
Yeah.
But generally, like people are selling that DVD for over $100. It's crazy. But yeah, it's one of the most original films, and yeah, it celebrated its 20th anniversary last year. Actually, it came out in 2001.
Cool.
So yeah, American Astronaut is definitely up there for me. It's just such an inventive space movie because it was shot in low budget. It's black and white. Yeah, and
Nice.
it's amazing.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah.
I remember just as a kid, my dad was a huge fan of like 1950s sci-fi. So like I saw like a ton of that genre. So, you know, a lot of it is on Earth, but then I remember like the Terror from Beyond Space, and there was another one with Leslie Nielsen, Planet.
Oh.
So okay, well, anyway, so like I'm familiar with like that that like 1950s genre. Yeah, this was Leslie Nielsen before he was doing comedy.
Yeah, he was a serious actor.
Yeah. But yeah, so okay, cool. I'll have to check that one out.
Yeah. I mean, there's so many great space movies. I mean, even just in recent memory, I think one movie that a lot of people slept on was Ad Astra, which came out in 2019, which is a great space movie because it's a movie. This is one of my favorite things about sci-fi. Like, even though I don't know if I could ever do sci-fi myself, is that it is like a launching pad for a lot of ideas. Like, it's a genre that seems kind of hooky and trashy, but then they put all these ideas in that they like to explore, you know, like Vonnegut's done that with his sci-fi work. So yeah, Ad Astra is one of those like sci-fi movies that has like incredible ideas, you know. And then even First Man, the movie about Neil Armstrong starring Ryan Gosling. I normally I dislike Damien Chazelle in his movies, but that movie was like the exception. I was like, man, this is really good. And that was definitely a theater movie because they shot the moon landing sequence in IMAX. And you know, it looked better than the actual moon landing. So
well, good.
Yeah. So yeah, there's definitely a lot of great space movies.
Yeah,
I feel. I mean, Solaris as well. Both Solarises, the Andrei Tarkovsky and the Steven Soderbergh version. Yeah.
Have you seen Sphere?
Oh no, I haven't. But isn't Sphere like underwater?
I think Sphere is underwater, but it's like it's alien.
Yeah.
And I mean, so and that's like a whole another subgenre is aliens in the ocean,
invasion, that kind of thing. The abyss, kind of thing. Yeah, for sure.
Okay, cool.
But yeah, Aliens too. Like the sequel to Aliens is like one of the greatest sequels of all time. You know, Aliens.
Such fond memories of watching that movie. Yeah.
Instant rewatch.
Well, we might have to do like a season, you know, like if we end up breaking this podcast into seasons, we might do a season on like space films, and just like we'll just go one at a time. All right, let's keep it moving though.
Okay, so the next movie is Spencer, which is the biopic of Princess Diana. Another movie that took me by surprise. Although I will say the trailer sold me on it. Like, it was one of those things where I saw the trailer and I was like, I want to see this movie. I've noticed that there were a lot of movies this past year that were doing the boxy format of like square 4x3. I mentioned French Dispatch. Another one was Tragedy of Macbeth. Also had the square format. So this one did as well. And I mean, I would say the cinematography of this movie is really up there for me, and it would deserve it if it won awards. But obviously, everybody's talking about Kristen Stewart's portrayal of Princess Diana, and she's won so many awards for it, and she may win an Oscar for it. I kind of found it to be a very mannered performance. You know, she's doing a lot of like gestures that I can see are telegraphed, which is also my issue with Meryl Streep. A lot of people love Meryl Streep, but I'm just like, but she's acting. Like, I can see that she's acting, and I'm more a fan of like something that's more naturalistic. I mean, she does kind of look like Princess Diana in some shots, which is incredible. But I mean, the cinematography to me is still the star of this movie, and I'd never seen a film by this director Pablo Larraín before, but I was interested to see like what his inspirations were, and you know, The Shining was one of them because it's set all on this estate most of the movie. So the way like it travels through corridors, there's a lot of steady cam. Yeah, and it's shot on film. That's the other thing. You know, it's like I don't know if people even notice that anymore because it was almost like a seamless transition from film to digital because a lot of digital emulates film.
Yeah.
But I can tell, you know, when something is shot on film, it's just the way the light kind of hits people is totally different on film. I forgot what that word was. It starts with an E. The emulsion. Yeah, the emulsion. Like you could see that on film. So yeah, that definitely made it amazing. Even though I saw it on digital, it would be incredible to see it, I guess, projected on film.
Totally.
Yeah, and the supporting performances actually in the movie were great. Like Timothy Spall, Sally Jenkins. I'm blanking on her.
Here.
Hawkins, Sally Hawkins, and
you got it.
Who's that guy who was he's a great character actor. He was actually in Prometheus and one of my favorite movies, 24-Hour Party People. Sean something. I'm blanking on his last name, but he plays the head
What's
chef.
the movie called again?
In the movie, Spencer.
Spencer. Here.
Yeah.
I'll find his name.
Yeah, Sean something. I'm blanking, but he was great in it too. So yeah, I guess that's really it. It's like the main flaw of the movie was the central performance to me. You know,
or Kristen Stewart.
The supporting cast was all amazing. Yeah, Sean Harris. That's
Sean Harris. There, nice.
Yeah, Sean Harris is a great actor. Yeah, he played Ian Curtis in 24-Hour Party People. Actually, that's another movie I think we should bookmark for a future episode because I think you would appreciate that movie.
24-Hour Party. I mean, you got me at party.
American Astronaut 24-Hour People. Yeah, see, there's even a commonality between those two because they both involve rock music. So
hey, sign me up.
Yeah,
you know, as you know, I've been doing these mosh pit highlight breakdowns, and I have one video that has about 2,000 views already, so I'm feeling pretty good.
Nice.
Yeah.
Hell yeah. Okay. All right. So all right, the next movie is Ghostbusters Afterlife. Did you see that?
Ooh, no. But this is the one with like Paul Rudd?
Yes, which is kind of a course correction after, I guess, that disastrous 2016 reboot. Which I never saw, but I've seen scenes from the movie that convinced me not to watch it. Even though I do like a lot of the actors who were in it. Like, okay. And I like Paul Feig as well. Like, you know, I'm a big fan of Freaks and Geeks, and even Spy was a really enjoyable movie, you know, but I don't know. So yeah, the way I just summarize Ghostbusters Afterlife is the algorithm gets it right, or maybe the nostalgia algorithm gets it right.
How did they get it? Like, like what did they do to get it right?
Well, yeah, it's just an interesting thing to me of like this idea of the broken clock can tell the time, you know, correctly twice a day. Sure. So I almost felt like it was an accident. You know, it wasn't like on purpose.
Yeah.
Because that is, I guess that's another thing that sums up this year a lot with Spider-Man No Way Home and the Matrix and trying to think of another kind of nostalgia
Dune
themed movie, but no, it wasn't, because Dune is actually, it's funny, it's not even on my list because but that's more of a technicality because I saw it under the worst circumstances. Like I saw it in AMC Prime, which is supposed to be like a great format. But the problem was I watched it in 3D.
Oh.
And you know, Denis Villeneuve is already like a dark filmmaker to begin with, his cinematography wise, and when you wear 3D glasses, it makes everything darker,
Mhm.
even more darker. So I could barely make things out from the movie. So I have no
That's a
opinion
bummer.
on Dune until I mean, I'm sure it's probably gonna get, hopefully, for award season. But no, Dune is, from what I was able to gather, is definitely an original piece. Like, he doesn't call back to David Lynch's movie at all. So that's good.
Yeah, I found Dune to be very easy to watch, followable, looked good.
Right.
You know, had no
Yeah,
problems.
which is, like, I think, hallmarks of a Villeneuve movie. You know, that's why.
Sort of no problems with the casting. Like, there wasn't anything that was like, that's weird. That's, you know, the only thing was maybe too many stars. So it's like, you know,
Sure.
you kind of get distracted. Oh, there's Momoa. When am I going to see him again? Oh, there's, you know, but just, you know, just very easy on the eyes. Good movie.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
Oh, would Mortal Kombat be a nostalgia kind of piece?
Yes, exactly. Yeah. Mortal Kombat for sure. See, I forgot about Mortal Kombat too.
Okay.
Or maybe even like, what a movie we discussed on the Filipino time pod earlier
Godzilla
this year,
Kong.
which I also forgot about. Godzilla versus Kong. You know, these movies, like, you know, they're proven properties, and the idea, like, the way I envision the nostalgia algorithm is like, oh, you remember this part, you know, that you liked, here it is again. You know, it's like, you know, but in a different, you know, guise or whatever. Or maybe, you know, like that's why I guess I appreciate The Matrix, because it is doing that, but in a way where there's a dark side to it. You know, the other nostalgia pieces are more like well-intentioned. Like, you know, I saw Spider-Man No Way Home on opening day, which I normally don't do, but I did it because AMC had this promo where if you saw it on opening day, you got a free NFT. So that's the only reason why I saw it on opening day in a packed screening.
Nice.
And it was a 3D screening too, and like, people were, you know, hollering and clapping all throughout the movie, you know. So that was it. But for me, like, well, of all the IPs too, I guess, like, Ghostbusters has always been near and dear to my heart. Like, I love the original movies, both of them, and also the cartoon. And then I collected the toys. You know, I had like an Ecto one when I was a kid, and, you know, Peter Venkman was my favorite Ghostbuster. So all of those things, like, it was just, you know, tapping into all of those things with this movie.
Yeah.
But I think one of the clinchers, though, of why they get it so right with this movie, it's not a masterpiece. Like, you know, it actually is far from it. It's so predictable, you know, all of these things. But it's the casting of oh my god, why am I blanking on her name now? The lead girl.
Here we go.
Is it Mackenzie or McKenna? McKenna Grace. So McKenna Grace, I didn't even realize I had seen her in movies before. I thought that this was her first role. But she was in this movie with Chris Evans, which he made in between the Marvel movies, called Gifted.
Okay.
And she was a lot younger then. And she was great in that too. And that was like I wasn't expecting that to be like a tearjerker. It's like kind of a Lifetime movie, but and it's based on a true story. But it was really good, and she was great in it. And, you know, like, this is several years later.
Yeah.
And yeah, she is. I feel like she's gonna be a star. Like, she definitely anchors the movie, and I'm glad that they made her the central part of the movie. And she basically is the main character of the film, you know.
Well, good.
And, you know, it does like the nostalgia things, you know. I mean, most people who wanted to see this movie have already seen it, so I won't spoil it. It's not a spoiler to say that the three living Ghostbusters show up, and then Egon shows up as a specter at
that's
the end,
nice.
you know. So that's meant to tug at heartstrings and stuff. And
that's great. See, that's prime nostalgia right there.
Right. Yeah, and, you know, the tone was just right.
Was Slimer back?
In a different form. It's kind of like you know, how Star Wars you know, did a soft reboot by bringing back characters that were in slightly different forms. So I forgot what they called the Slimer creature in this movie, but you know, that was actually one of the best sequences in the movie. The whole Ecto 1 chase was really good.
Nice.
But yeah, I like the new characters, and I mean, Finn Wolfhard doesn't need to be in this movie, but everybody else was great. You know.
Perfect.
So yeah, the algorithm got it right. That's
Way to
what I
go,
feel.
algorithm.
And yeah. So the last one in my troublesome but really enjoyed was actually this short documentary that was on YouTube called The Hoff Twins. And just to put a little context with this movie, this documentary, I'm a big fan of Channel 5 News, which used to be uh, All Gas No Breaks with Andrew Callahan, I think his name is. And there was this whole mess with All Gas No Breaks, so he decided to do his own thing with Channel 5 news. And it's not really news, but it's just like the bizarre subculture exploration. So
yeah, like he goes into parking lots and interviews people in parking lots and that kind of a thing.
Yeah, or like he goes to like events like Talladega Speedway, or the most recent one was like a Fish concert. I mean, you might have some footage there for your mosh pit review. Actually, he has another one that from an earlier show. Like he goes to like kind of like an Astro World type show, but not Astro World. That would have been crazy if he was at Astro World. R.I.P. those people. But he goes to a show like that, and there's some moshing in it too.
Cool.
Where it's like you have multiple performers. So yeah, it's worth watching. But so Hoff Twins is kind of a spin-off of that. Like the Hoff Twins actually show up in one of his pieces, which is one of my favorite ones that he did last year, which is about pickup artists, or like guys who want to learn from pickup artists. And and then the Hoff Twins just have a cameo in that piece, where they basically just show that their approach is just like none of this bullshit that the pickup artist is teaching, which is just funny. So they have their own documentary, which is basically about them. Oh my god, I'm blanking on the town in the Bay Area where they grew up, but it's a predominantly black area. Like they were the only two white guys that grew up in this town. And it obviously it shaped them, and they've basically been accepted in that community, and how the culture is something that they're a part of. It's like the way they speak, the way they carry themselves. And I even like, one of the highlights for me of the documentary is how it distinguishes between the two twins, because there is a distinction. I mean, not obviously looks wise. Like, I mean, I think I can't tell the difference between twins most of the time, but in terms of, I guess, their personality, because they are identical. And they're much better than the what is it? People been talking about the Island Boys.
Oh yeah.
They have a lot more depth than the Island Boys. Or like there was the ATL twins before. I don't know if you remember them. They were in Spring Breakers, that Harmony Korine movie. But like there's a lot more interesting things. And I just love how because later on Andrew interviews Chet Hanks, and then I was telling my friend who also follows all of this, like, he's like, there's gonna be a crossover, like Hoff Twins and Chet Hanks. And then sure enough, it happens, and it's actually quite moving. Like their exchange, it's worth watching. So it's part of this whole universe. So I would say Hoff Twins is just kind of a gateway towards Channel 5 News.
Right.
So that channel's worth watching and subscribing to.
That's great. I love anything that's on YouTube. Like it's awesome.
Yes. Yeah. Actually, something I just discovered yesterday, there's a 3-hour like YouTube video just about Nicolas Cage. I'm like, I want to watch this thing and see where this goes. Like, how much can you talk about Nick Cage in 3 hours, And then just based on like the opening couple of minutes or so, I'm already hooked. Like, I'm like, man, this is really good. Like, it's drawing from so many movies and just the different periods in his career. And Nicolas Cage was in several movies this past year, not just Pig. But I also have been going back to some of his earlier performances, like especially in the 80s. I really loved Valley Girl. I don't know if
Right.
you've seen the original Valley Girl. Like, he's incredible in that.
That's
And
like that's maybe my sister's favorite movie.
it's brilliant. It's amazing. I think it's a masterpiece. Like, yeah, it's one of my favorite movies now too.
All right. Well,
And
maybe that's one that I'll write down to Valley Girl as a
yeah,
potential
maybe we can
for.
have your sister as a guest.
Oh yeah, that's a good
to
idea.
talk about. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, and then I haven't finished it because I fell asleep watching it last night, but I was watching Peggy Sue Got Married,
Yeah.
which also has Nick Cage in it. And so far from what I've been seeing, his performance is great. And
Yeah.
I I've been slowly going through kind of the B-side Francis Ford Coppola movies because everybody basically considers those 4 movies he made in the 70s to be it, and then everything else he kind of dropped off.
Yeah.
But there's been some like reappreciation for certain movies, and I think Peggy Sue Got Married is fascinating, and I can't wait to finish it. So
cool. Nice.
Yeah. So that those were my troublesome but really enjoyed. So now we're at the top tier.
Ooh, baby. Okay, I'm excited.
The final 4. All right. Okay. So
the final 4. What can they be?
Yeah. All right. So this one I actually think you need to see, even though it's only playing in theaters. And this was, I think, the last movie second to last movie I saw last year, which was Licorice Pizza.
Yep.
By Paul Thomas Anderson.
Yep.
You're from the Valley, so I
yeah.
think you'd appreciate it. I mean, I've been watching the new season of Cobra Kai, and I love all the name drops in the Valley. Like, I mean, I also lived in the Valley for a brief period in my life, so I love that it's
you're from the Valley now. It's official.
Yeah, exactly. I lived in NoHo. I lived with your mom for like a couple of months. So.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah. So I just love that the Valley is this thing, and even bringing up Valley Girl, the Blu-ray of that movie is amazing. I mean, we'll get into it when we do the actual episode, but it has like historical stuff about it that I didn't know. So this movie is set roughly around 1973,
right?
And it was the time when the Valley had basically become what it is now. Like, they were basically saying that the Valley, the last time it was really like a center for culture in its own kind of world before it became this homogenous suburb, it was in the 60s, and then all of that was lost in the 70s. So that's kind of in the background of this movie, but it's really more about this young kid growing up in the Valley. He has aspirations of being an actor and an entrepreneur, and he falls in love with this 25-year-old girl who happened to be part of this crew that were taking like the school photo, and he's enamored with her. And it's just fascinating how TikTok Gen Z crowd like really tried to cancel this movie because of accusations of grooming and pedophilia, which I just don't think are warranted. I mean, if we were even I feel like equating it to their terms of like roles of power and all of that, because you always view the victim as somebody who has less power, right? So in this movie, it's not like she's the one who's pursuing him. He's the one who's always pursuing her, and then and I don't think enough people have seen it, so I don't want to spoil the ending for this one. I think people should go see it. It's all about the journey of getting there, and kind of the the misgivings, the mishaps, all of those things. That's more what the movie is about. It's about that awkward courtship, which she resists through most of the movie. So there's never this thing like she knows that it's not right. That she's, even though it's just a funny thing of like, had he been like 5 years later, like when he's 20 and she's 30, it's not a big deal anymore. So I like that idea of like, it's just this moment in time and you don't even know if it's going to work out. You know, it might, and then like, it's forgotten about later on, but you just never know. But like, the accusations that the movie has had of being problematic and all of that, I just don't think it's warranted.
Well,
because
I mean, I think just in general, movies are a good place to explore those topics.
Mhm.
Just to kind of get people talking about it, because life is messy. Life isn't cut and dry, and
Sure.
you want to give people the benefit of the doubt. Obviously, you don't want anyone to get hurt. So I think like making a movie in the 70s and having it involve that topic is like a perfectly fine way to kind of
Right.
explore these things, because we're all trying to sort
Yeah.
it out together.
Sure. Yeah, and I mean I read like what inspired Paul and Thomas Anderson to make this movie was actually he saw something on Ventura Boulevard where there was this young teenage kid who was hitting on this like older woman, and he was like, oh yeah, what if she calls his bluff on it. Like he asks her out and then she actually shows up. That was the whole
Yeah.
impetus for the film. And I thought that was fascinating. And Paul Thomas Anderson was born on 1970, so the year that the movie is set is actually he would have been 3 years old.
Yeah.
So it definitely I think takes place in a world that is lived in, but at the same time it's still kind of occupying a same kind of dream space that Tarantino's Once Upon a Time in Hollywood
Right.
takes place in, like almost like an alternate reality, an alternate 70s, even though there are some bases. Like I looked into it, like there's this whole subplot about like this mayoral candidate Joel Wax, who I didn't know was a real guy, and he actually ran against Tom Bradley, and we all know Tom Bradley won because Tom Bradley has now a terminal named after him in LAX. But it's just like those little details and like the gas shortages, like all of that was really done well. And Bradley Cooper's character is actually based on a real producer named John Peters, who was like a Barbra Streisand's hairdresser, and he became Barbra Streisand's boyfriend and a producer. And he produced the original, well, not the original, but the Barbra Streisand version of A Star Is Born, because the original was with Judy Garland.
Nice.
But he's based on a real character. But I understand people's like other kind of qualms with this movie. That one, it's kind of episodic. It's kind of like a hangout movie, really. Like there's no real overarching plot outside of the romantic interest. It just goes from like beat to beat, and it's more like slice of life. And other people don't like Philip Seymour Hoffman's kid's performance, Cooper Hoffman. Some people find him really annoying, but like the thing is, what I feel is that he actually nails it, because he is supposed to be annoying. He's like this kid who's 15 years old who's like overconfident and thinks too highly of himself. So I think he actually nailed the role. But I have to say, like, Alana Haim, her performance is my favorite performance of the year. Like, if anything that makes the movie worth watching, it's her. Like, it's her first ever movie role, and she nails it. Like, it's incredible. And like, I know a girl that's exactly like her, and I've even had a crush on a girl like her. And even just like a little sentimental detail was that she's left-handed. And there's a scene where Gary Valentine's, Cooper Hoffman's character, points that out. He's like, oh, you're left-handed. I've never met a left-handed person before. And I just remember my first ever crush in third grade was left-handed. And she sat to my right, and I'm right-handed. So when we were doing writing exercises, she would always elbow me, like knock me off my writing. And then my first ever girlfriend was also left-handed. So that definitely struck a chord with me. But just the way she portrays herself as this girl in her mid-20s who's trying to find herself and is also just frustrated with how her life is going, because probably she thought she would have figured it out by now, which is the exact opposite of Alana Haim in real life, by the way, because she's part of a hugely successful band with her sisters who also are in the movie. Like her entire family in the movie is actually played by her family, her parents and her sisters.
That's a talented family. Jeez.
And her dad is her dad is great as well. Like I think they said the dad just improv'd most of his lines.
You must love that.
So it's and then they're also from the Valley. I mean that tie-in too is because PTA had directed some of their music videos, and I thought, oh, is he just a fan of the band? But no, actually Uh, I think their mom is like a family friend of
Okay.
the Andersons, so their moms are friends. So they kind of grew up in the valley. Um, so I think he even babysat them or something. So yeah, there was that connection there.
Totally.
So it was great to feature them in it. But yeah, it's also beautifully shot. Another movie that's
Yeah.
shot on film. It
Yeah.
I will say this too. This is another reason why I like the movie so much is because I did not like most of Paul Thomas Anderson's movies from There Will Be Blood to Phantom Thread.
Mm-hmm.
Like I feel like they were very cynical and they were about people just being cruel to each other, which I guess a lot of people enjoyed. But I
Yeah.
don't know, like it was nice to actually see a movie where it's not as black and white as that in this movie. Like some people do cruel things, but it doesn't come from a place of meanness and evil like the other movies do, you know. And for him to go back to the valley as like this changed man, because in a way, I guess the silver lining of There Will Be Blood is that it was him kind of coming into his own. Like he had to shake off a lot of his influences from
Mm-hmm.
his early films, which I still really love. But for him to come back to the valley as now this filmmaker who's more confident in himself, and he's
Yeah.
even now his own cinematographer. He
Yeah.
co-shot the film with Michael Bauman, who also co-shot Phantom Thread.
Cool.
So just the fact that he's a changed person and he goes back to where he began. Even though technically his first film wasn't set in the valley, it was set in
Nice.
Reno. But that's where he's from.
Yeah.
Like for him to make this kind of comeback was great.
Yeah.
So
And I listened to PTA on a podcast. He was talking about how I think he plans on having it be like a really long theatrical run before it even goes to VOD. So
no, I love it.
So hopefully I'll get a shot at seeing it in the upcoming months.
Yeah, please. And yeah,
Right,
if you can see it projected on film, go see it on film.
Okay, cool. So we got 3 left.
Was that? Oh, wow, that was the first one. There's 3 more.
I think so.
Okay, all right. Yeah, okay. So interestingly enough, even though I won't bring this up next because I want to save it for last, is there's another movie in this list which is also has something to do with having a long theatrical run, and we'll talk about it once we get to that movie. But the next movie I'll bring up is The Worst Person in the World. Which it's that's the English title. It's a Norwegian film by Joachim Trier. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing his name correctly. But yeah, I've always enjoyed him as a filmmaker. Like I always thought that he had promise. I saw his first film, or was it his first film? It was definitely one of his earlier movies, Reprise. I think around 2008. And I was like, man, this guy's really got potential, and I kind of want to revisit it. I haven't seen it in a while. And I kind of just dropped off. He's made movies in between, and I caught up with Oslo. What was the full title? It's Oslo something. And that was pretty good too. But I never felt like there was a movie where I was like, this is a masterpiece. I'm like, this is a great film. Like they just all had potential. And I feel like with The Worst Person in the World, he fulfilled that potential. It's like he pulls off a lot of incredible, like innovative things in this film. It ostensibly, again, it's similar to, actually that's a common theme with the top 4. I realized was that it's about like a woman finding herself, and the worst person in the world is the main character, which I'm blanking on her name now. And it's funny because he's worked with this actress before, but I completely forgot about her in Oslo. Like in that movie, I was just like, who was she in that movie? Because she really stands out in this film. Like just it's another incredible performance. I mean, if not for Alana Haim's performance, I think she won Best Actress, actually. This actress in I gotta name her now.
Is it Renate Rensby?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. That's how her name is pronounced.
Or
Renate.
Renate.
Yeah.
Renate or Renate.
Yeah.
Cool.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So another thing was I actually didn't think I was gonna be able to watch this movie before the year ended because the distributor Neon pushed it back. So it's actually gonna get its official theatrical release this year.
Cool.
I think
Nice.
in February. So I
Right.
might actually go back and see it in the theater because it is a very cinematic work. Like you'll see it even in the trailer. There's a
Yeah.
moment where he freezes time, which is really
Oh,
incredible.
cool.
But yeah, I just love how it's divided into chapters, and each chapter has like its own unique kind of detail or quirk.
Yeah.
And yeah, I can't remember even the time span of the movie, how long it lasts, but it's definitely a coming of age for like a lady who's like in her late 20s moving into her 30s, you know.
Yeah.
And then just a weird coincidence too with Licorice Pizza, it's about like her kind of being involved with an older man,
Mm-hmm.
and there being objections to their relationship, being like, you know, it's like we're on a different timeline, you know, like I'm already the guy's like basically saying I'm ready to settle down and all these things. And then briefly you feel like, oh, maybe they might actually be able to make it work, which is fascinating to me because, you know, the dynamics of a relationship now as I'm growing older and, you know, I know better, so much of a relationship, and you can probably speak to this too, is just both of you wanting to make it work,
Mm-hmm.
you know, rather than having commonalities, you know. It's just about that
Yeah.
agreement of
Yeah.
like, yeah, let's make this work, you know.
Yeah.
um
You know, the mechanics, you know, like how good are you guys at problem solving, you know, or, you know, and then,
mm.
and heading in a
Yeah, and
direction.
I've always felt like you and Malika are, yeah, like you guys make a good team, you know, you're a good pair. So
It's definitely a huge part of it.
yeah, yeah. So the movie touches upon that, you know. Uh, and yeah, I mean, I want to save the surprises because hardly anybody's seen
Okay.
this movie yet. But
Okay.
there's a lot of like cinematic, like I don't even want to call them tricks, but illusions that the movie pulls off that
Right.
is really incredible.
Nice.
So it's worth seeking out in the theater. And
That's
yeah,
awesome.
Renata, her performance is amazing. Yeah. So
Cool. That's good to hear.
worst person in the world. Yeah.
Worst person in the world, maybe best movie of the year.
Okay. Yeah. Exactly. All right, so that knocks that one out.
Yeah.
The next movie also, I guess, hardly anybody saw. Like when I went to see it, I actually there was only probably three of us in the theater, and I didn't even know it was gonna play in my area. Like, you know, I'm in the OC for listeners who don't know, and we do have like an art theater called the Frida. But sometimes movies don't manage to make it out there.
Mm-hmm.
So this movie, The Souvenir Part 2, by Joanna Hogg, is, you know, as the title implies, a sequel to The Souvenir.
Mm-hmm.
And it happened to be playing actually in a theater in Irvine, near where I used to live in Irvine. It was just right outside it, and it was like an Edwards theater. And I was like, this was the only theater that was playing at the OC, so I had to go. And you know, I love the first Souvenir. It was already like implied that it was gonna have a part two, like the end credits of the first Souvenir says
Mm-hmm.
it, but it got pushed back. Like it was because the first Souvenir came out in 2019, so part two was supposed to come out in 2020, but obviously the pandemic happened, so they pushed it back to this year. And I didn't even know if it was ever going to come out because there was barely any fanfare. Like it's an A24 movie, and I don't know, I just find like A24's like promotion of their movies to be a little strange, where they're really like four wall a certain movie like Pig or The Green Knight, and then they'll just kind of tuck something away like this, like the Souvenir
Yeah.
Part 2, where it's like, nobody's gonna see this, you won't see the trailer. Like, yeah, I never even saw the trailer in theaters.
Uh-huh.
But I knew about it, and you know, once I found out that it came out, like I had to go see it. And to me, it's still of a piece of the first film. Like I treat them as two parts of one movie,
Mm-hmm.
like rather than two separate films. You know, like you
Okay.
can't really watch this film and get it.
Yeah.
You need to have seen part
Yeah.
one. You know, it's a continuation of it. And you know, to just summarize it, because again, you know, this theme of a young woman kind of coming into her own again comes up in this movie, because it's about this this young filmmaking student who's based on the director Joanna Hogg.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's based on her actual experience of being a film student and falling in love with this man who was obviously terrible for her, and he was a drug addict. And there's a moment that happens in the Souvenir Part 2 where he sells off all her film equipment for drugs, you know. And yeah, so that's the kind of person that she's with. And, you know, I guess for people who haven't seen it, I won't spoil the whole thing, but the second part is about her getting over that relationship and how she decides to basically make a film of it. So it becomes meta. It's like the film about a film about this experience, you know. And then the actress that actually Joanna Hogg first worked with was Tilda Swinton. And Tilda Swinton is also in both movies, but now she's playing the mother of the film student, and the film student is actually Tilda Swinton's real daughter in real life, cool. Honor Swinton Byrne, and she's great. Like her performance is great. And, you know, I gotta give a shout out to Richard Ayoade. Are you a fan of Richard Ayoade?
I wouldn't
He's
know.
from the IT Crowd. He was in this movie called The Watch, which I haven't seen, but I'm now curious about, with Ben Stiller. And it was kind of one of those stupid comedies that came out in the 2010s. But yeah, he's a really funny guy. I really like the show he has on Hulu called Travel Man, where he spends 48 hours in a different country, and sometimes he has a guest with him. And that's a really enjoyable like filler show. He's just an interesting guy. And I mean, he's also an interesting filmmaker, actually, I would say, because he's made 2 films, Submarine, which kind of gets compared to Wes Anderson, which is warranted, you know, but I thought it was also like sweet on its own. But I really liked his second film, which a lot of people don't like, which is The Double, with Jesse Eisenberg and Mia Wasikowska. And I thought that was a really like confident piece, and I wish he'd make another movie. And yeah, funnily enough, he's a filmmaker in The Souvenir. And in The Souvenir Part 1, I didn't actually even recognize him because he shaved his head, because he's known for having like this kind of poofy hair. So he had a shaved head, and I didn't recognize him in the first Souvenir. He only had one scene, but it was a very memorable scene. And they definitely give him more of a role in the second film, and he's great. It's such a great performance. Like, you know, he would have my vote for best supporting actor, you know, if it was up to me.
Sure.
But yeah, The Souvenir, it's great. Like, it's also shot on film. I don't know why that also comes up again as another thing. You know, I guess because it is a dying medium, there's not many filmmakers who have that luxury to do it. So, you know, when you see it, it's just, it's definitely a unique performance. Like, it registers differently in your mind, you know, when you see a film being, even if it's digitally projected, it still is different. Like, the motion is different. So so The Souvenir Part 2, I mean, for the longest time, that was the only movie that I actually liked. Like, that was the other thing about this year, was that it was so, I feel, bottom heavy. Like, I had to watch most of the films I liked towards the end of the year, because it was just so disappointing. But I guess it came out in October. And I think I saw it on Halloween, actually. Funnily enough. So it came out like late October. But for the longest time, I was like, okay, that salvages the year. Like, I at least saw one masterpiece, you know.
Well, good.
And I really hope that they come out with the 2 films as one set, and I would definitely buy that on Blu-ray and watch both movies. So yeah. Okay. All right, so that leaves one more movie.
Oh baby,
and the 4
here we
aren't
go.
Actually, they're interchangeable, but this is just because this was the last movie. Like, I ended the year watching it. Actually, I ended the year and started the year watching this movie. Like, it fell over the.
Sure.
I paused it basically at midnight just to watch the fireworks and stuff, and then resumed the movie.
You came back.
It wasn't intentional, but I forgot like what happened. Like, I guess I'd taken some edibles, which I guess has become part of my movie going experience this year too, which is new, to kind of enhance it. but I guess that also got me a little distracted. Like I think I before I even got started, I had to play some records
Yeah.
for a while. Like I listened to the Fragile, by Nine Inch Nails
Totally.
on New Year's Eve.
Like, have you ever gotten into that realm where you try to sync up an album with a movie, like make your own sync ups?
Oh yeah,
Oh, you
for
have?
sure.
Cool.
Especially with silent films, because I don't like a lot of silent film scores. I think they're very cheesy.
Yeah.
So I prefer to either watch it in complete silence or play a record.
Okay, perfect. Yeah.
Because like, and then generally I prefer instrumental like records, like
Nice.
no vocals.
All right.
But yeah, that it wasn't concurrent. I listened to the Fragile, which I realized like it just resembles like a new beginning to me. Like it sounds like a new beginning. That's what the Fragile means to me. So I was like, I have to listen to the Fragile again. And so I started late, and I was like, yeah, this is gonna overlap with midnight, but who cares? So it's this movie called Memoria, which I was very hyped about. Like I had heard about it. And again, it stars Tilda Swinton, but this time she's the lead, and it's by this Thai filmmaker that I'm a big fan of, Apichapong Weerasethakul. And for shorthand, most people just call him Joe. You know how Thai people always have like their their nickname. So his nickname is Joe, which is endlessly amusing to me.
Yeah.
Considering if you know him as a personality, like he doesn't strike you as a Joe.
He's not a Joe.
But he's not an ordinary Joe. And yeah, that's what I'll say. Like he is one of the most innovative and talented filmmakers working today. Like even older filmmakers mentioned that they really admire his work. And it's crazy to think that he started his career like 20 years ago. And he's been working steadily. And I wrote like a really lengthy review of this on Letterboxd actually about the movie, because again, this is another movie that I feel like a lot of people would have reservations about or qualms about, especially because of the trend of where world cinema is heading, where a lot of these filmmakers are making English language films with stars in them. But I actually am fascinated by it as a subgenre. Like I think it's actually a lot of the movies are very interesting. The results are fascinating. So I was definitely not gonna hold it against this movie that it had Tilda Swinton in it and that it was mostly in English. There's some parts that are in Spanish. And it's another movie that it's hard to really describe it without giving too much away. But I will just say, from what you can also, because the trailer is also very enigmatic and mysterious. But I will just say, like, the basic premise of what pushes it forward is that Tilda Swinton hears this kind of loud kind of bang sound, and it's a very unique kind of bang sound, and she's trying to trace the origin of this sound. And that's basically
that's a good non-spoiler jumping off point.
Synopsis. So and you being a guy that's a sound guy, like I think you'd be fascinated by it, especially like there's a sequence that's in the trailer where she's listening to the different bangs in a recording studio, to kind of figure out what that sound was, so yeah. And I'm fascinated by sound too, because even I guess in my creative work that I'm always trying to find it's funny you brought up that idea of setting your own soundtrack to movies. Like there's this idea with cinema where it's supposed to be like sound and vision coming together, right? That they're not separate. But when films started, they were always separate, because sound was not recorded directly onto film. You had to basically splice them together in the editing. So I'm kind of coming back to that idea that sound is separate from cinema, that you can create, like, your sound does not have to be faithful to the image, right? That you can create like your own soundscape that's completely independent of it. And I mean, the soundtracks that I really love can work independently of the movie. Like an example I would use all the time is Eraserhead. Like soundtrack of Eraserhead is its own like dark ambient album, and I love it. And just tying it into a Pichapong or Joe, they actually released an album of like sounds from his film, because the sound design in his films are always like meticulous. They're incredible. Like my favorite film of his is Syndromes in a Century, and the sound design in that film is amazing. So it's a mix of some atmospheric sounds and then some of the songs that show up, because he's a very musical filmmaker too. Like there's a little musical sequence in Memoria which is incredible. um so yeah, I mean, how to describe this movie, like what I loved about it without spoiling it. But yeah, it's just a transcendent experience. Like
Cool.
even I think had I seen it without the aid of edibles, I would still feel that way about it. And this is also coming from, like, I was really disappointed by Joe's previous film, Cemetery of Splendor, which a lot of people like. I'm probably in the minority, because I just thought it was very slight, and then it didn't really do anything new. Because one of the things that I love about his films is that there's like a revelation towards the end of each movie, and it's like it's sometimes very subtle and quiet, but it's a revelation, and it just didn't feel like a revelation towards the end of Cemetery of Splendor. So to me, like, Memoria is kind of a return to that, where it's like it's basically the pivotal point in the movie where you're on board with it or not, is like the revelation. It's like when that happens, like yeah. So yeah, but going back to the release of movies, like, it's very controversial, because again I bring up Neon, this which is basically A24's main rival, I feel like. And Neon, they produced Titane, which won Palme d'Or, and then the previous Palme d'Or winner and also Best Picture winner Parasite was also distributed by Neon. So their proposed plan for Memoria and the release date, and this is why I had to watch it at home, is that they're never going to release it, at least in America, on home video or streaming. It's going to be on a permanent theatrical run.
Got it.
And in principle, I have no issue with that. I'm like, okay, sure, I love that. I mean, there's certain movies I've seen that only are meant to be seen at the theater and have never gotten home video releases, like Matthew Barney's Cremaster Cycle is an example. Actually, all of Matthew Barney's movies have not been released on streaming or video on demand, so you can only see them when they get theatrical run. So that's not an issue for me. The main issue that I have, and what most other people have echoed, especially people who don't live in the major cities, is that their plan is that it will only get a release like 1 week at a time in a different city. So you have to wait.
So you have to hit the window.
Yes, of that week. So it just recently did its week in New York. So I'm assuming logically the next week is LA. But then Chicago, San Francisco. You can just predict that it's gonna hit all the major cities first. And it's like, how long do people have to wait? Like, if you live in like I have a friend, hey Brandon, my friend Brandon, he lives in Kenosha. Like, when is
2023?
Like, when is Memoria coming to? Or like, when is it coming to Garden Grove in Orange County? Like, it's like, how long do we have to wait to see this movie? So I think that was the mishap, was that the fact that they're doing these 1 week runs. Like, just do a simultaneous release. Like, it's fine if it's only going to play in the theater, but release it in several cities. Don't do the one city at a time per week. Like, you'll only cover 52 cities this year. Like,
it's gonna be tough.
That's not gonna be enough. And like, how do you decide the hierarchy of like what city gets it next, aside from the mega cities? So I very much disagree with Neon's release strategy, and I have a feeling it's gonna blow up in their face. It already has, actually, because it's received a lot of backlash, because a lot of people who want to see it don't live in these cities. And then on top of that, like, this actually happened in Twitter recently, and I don't know if I want to highlight this guy's account, but people who know. So there was this Twitter account that basically started posting like links to movies that may be hard to find or hard to see. And the Memoria link has already been taken down. Like, but I that's how I saw it. I mean, I won't reveal how I saw it.
Yeah.
But anyway,
No.
yeah. But this Twitter guy, he got like 2,000 followers overnight just because he was posting these links, and and people are begging him to basically re-upload the Memoria link, because some people are like, saying which small town they're from in America and like how long they have to wait before it gets released. Because I think everywhere else in the world, it's getting like a home video release, like that copy that was distributed was actually like I think somebody had like a streaming copy from another part of the world. So yeah, that's the only way that people can see it. So that's my main issue with this movie, is just Neon's
release strategy.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it makes it less fun. So I guess I'll look and see it when it's going to come to North Carolina, but until then I guess it's going to be on the back burner.
Yeah, and that's the other thing. They don't even have like a preview or like a list of what order the cities are going to be. Like, it's just you have to wait till the next week.
You have to just favorite that website and just refresh every day, I guess.
Right, exactly. Bookmark it, and then I mean, I definitely, if it does play near me, I mean, I'm a hop, skip, and a jump from LA, but that's a whole nother thing. I kind of just don't want to go to LA lately, but I could still probably go see it theatrically in LA. But if it does come to Orange County, fuck it. I mean, I'd even drive down to like San Diego to watch it.
Yeah, exactly.
If it ever plays in San Diego.
Well, cool.
Yeah. So,
thanks for running down your movies. I'm happy to report.
Yeah, man.
There's 2 movies that I saw last year that I really liked that you didn't see, so I'm kind of surprised by.
Oh, okay.
Well, actually, right. You know what? You haven't. Okay. Maybe you've seen one of them. Okay, so the movie that I saw that I really liked was called No Man of God. Have you seen this one?
Nope, I did not see
it. It's by director Amber Seeley, and it's another. It's marketed as another Ted Bundy movie, but it's not another Ted Bundy movie because. Okay. So it stars Luke Kirby and Elijah Wood. Luke Kirby is Ted Bundy. Elijah Wood is the FBI interviewer who's kind of tasked to kind of talk to him about what it's like to be a killer and to try to get all the details.
So he's like the profiler.
The profile, exactly. And so it's basically about their relationship. But Amber Seeley really wanted the movie to have a feminist perspective, and it was shot entirely during COVID. So it's a lot of 2 men in a room kind of a story. So it was kind of like, how do you make it more feminist? And she found some really innovative ways to focus on certain aspects of their conversations. And I think it really works. It's really small. It's I wouldn't say a small film. It certainly had a nice release. I think you can rent it on iTunes. It's intimate, and there's a scene at the end where Luke Kirby kind of takes Elijah Wood into what it's like to do the murders. That's like still kind of sticks with me. It's like very, very memorable. Okay, so I would recommend No Man of God.
Yeah, I mean. Yeah, for sure. I can't believe I missed it, because I'm a fan of the David Fincher show Mindhunter.
Yeah.
And that's what it's about. So it's like I would love to see more of this lore.
Yeah, so. It's in that realm. Yeah. Right. So yeah, if you like Mindhunter, and then the other movie, I haven't finished it. I'm only about 20. I have about 20 minutes left. And it's unclear to me whether
you love it, even though it's like
and it's unclear to me whether it was released in 2020 or 2021. But it's Kurosawa's film, Wife of a Spy.
Oh, Kiyoshi Kurosawa.
Yeah, have you seen that?
Oh yeah, I heard of this movie. Okay, no, I haven't seen it, but now that you've mentioned that, because I thought it was some generic thing. Like, I guess I was thinking of the Spielberg movie, A Bridge of Spies or something.
Bridge of Spies.
I didn't know that it was his film.
No, yeah.
Actually, it was funny. I had an opportunity to go see it for free, but I just wasn't up to driving to LA.
Oh, sure.
But there was a free screening at
do it.
Yeah, Letterboxd actually held a free screening at Los Feliz. And I was just I'm up to driving to
Yeah.
go see this.
Well,
Yeah.
right now we just rented it on Amazon Prime, and it's man, it's beautiful. Like just the way it's shot, every shot is like it's just it looks so good. It draws you in. Hearing them speak Japanese, it's so musical, and like it's easy to follow. It's set in 1940s Japan, in the background of of just like Japan, Axis versus Allies, sort of
right.
It's in the background, the war between Japan and China, and it's just magic. And so we're not even we're at the third. We stopped it at the beginning of the third act. Okay. So I don't even know how it ends, so I can't spoil it, but I recommend it already.
Yeah. I mean, I've actually only seen one Kiyoshi Kurosawa movie, and I liked it a lot. And it was also a movie that had a surprising third act. And it's only an hour long. It's called Seventh Code. Okay. But I really enjoyed it a lot, especially for such a compact film. I've been meaning to watch more of his movies, and I will just say, also relating to the Japanese filmmakers, like I should give like an honorable mention to Ryosuke Hamaguchi. So one of actually my most anticipated movies of the year was Drive My Car, which was Hamaguchi's adaptation of a short story two short stories by Haruki Murakami. And it's like 3 hours long, and I was so excited to go see it. And I was disappointed by it. Like it was just that I don't know. Like I guess if you're adapting Murakami, this is why I think Murakami bristled against adaptations of his work, because there's a certain like touch that he has and a mood that you have to hit, and I don't think Hamaguchi got it. And I guess he was trying to make his own film, but at the same time, it kind of falls in between two stools by him trying to do his film. But it does have some interesting elements in it. Like the main character, he does plays where every actor speaks in their native language, which is fascinating. So there's actually this Filipino actor, Perry Dizon, and he's in the play in the movie. Actually, I think they're doing Uncle Vanya. And he speaks in Tagalog, so all his lines of dialogue are in Tagalog in the movie.
Oh, great!
So that was fascinating, and then I love that it takes its time. That I like the idea of short stories being expanded upon, but it just didn't quite work. Like there was just something really bland about the movie. And the thing is, Hamaguchi actually made two movies this year, and the other one I haven't seen, which I'm going to catch up on, which is Wheel of Fortune and Fantasy. And I previewed the movie a little bit, and I was like, this is already much better than Drive My Car. Like,
okay.
Because he's one of my favorite filmmakers. Like he's just he's one of the best Japanese filmmakers working today, and one of the younger ones too, because Kurosawa's kind of up there now.
Yeah.
In terms of age. And then who's the other guy? Sion Sono, who I didn't realize was also a lot older, because he had a movie with Nick Cage this year called Prisoners of the Ghostland, which was also just disappointing.
Right.
But yeah, just you mentioning Japan and like the language, I just thought of that of Hamaguchi. But yeah, Wife of the Spy, I'm definitely curious.
It's a really enjoyable watch so far. And then and then just the other movies I saw this year, I really liked, but they kind of belong in the fun category, is Mortal Kombat and Godzilla. Like Mortal Kombat, just for the Kano performance, like that. I don't know, the way that the way the actor was just like wins. He was just such a smart ass, like making fun of everybody.
Yeah.
And then there was a movie with Sandra Bullock called Unforgivable, which it's kind of one of those movies that Netflix pops up. It looks like Bird Box, so you're like, oh, I'll give it a shot. But it felt like sort of a crime procedural drawn out into a movie. It's so it's
interesting.
Unforgivable was kind of forgettable, I guess, to put it like that.
Okay.
But yeah, so yeah,
gotcha.
No Man of God and Wife of a Spy.
Okay, yeah, for sure. I mean, I would even love to do like a an episode on Kiyoshi Kurosawa. Like, I mean, he has a lot of films, so we'd have to just like handpick them. But you know, like
we'll
the
main
one or two. There's like Cure, Cure and Seance on a Wet Afternoon. Like those ones are the ones that like people will say are like his best work.
Right.
Cool. And I mean, you know, if you want to see Seventh Code as well, because it's a fun movie and it's only an hour long.
Oh, perfect.
I really like Seventh Code.
All right.
And I guess we could end on just the outlook of this year movie wise.
Let's talk about
it. So I was just thinking, well, I'm already looking forward to movies. Like I feel like movies are coming early this year, and maybe it was the backlog from the pandemic, and then we're now seeing an influx of movies. Like, I mean, already next week, I'm excited for the new Scream movie. Yeah. So I'm gonna go see that.
I've been watching. There's a horror movie account on YouTube called Dead Meat. Mm-hmm. And they do breakdowns of like every horror movie. So I've been watching the 20-minute synopses of Scream 1 through 4, just to kind of get caught up. And
I don't remember 3 or 4. That's the thing. I've seen all 4, but I don't remember.
They're the most forgettable. 1 and 2 were so good, and then but overall it's a series that, you know, doesn't necessarily have total duds in it. You know, like some people might say 3 is a total dud, but it's not like Friday the 13th where there's some awful ones, you know?
Yeah, because I think the third one was the one that Kevin Williamson didn't write. You know, I mean, all 4 were directed by Wes Craven. I don't even know who's directing this 5th one. But and it had an MTV series. Like, I don't know how they pulled off the series, you know, like exactly. But, you know, again, it's just the nostalgia algorithm. You know, I'm a big fan of the first movie, so and a little bit of the second one. So, you know, I'd just be curious to see. And, you know, January and February, it's the dog days of movies. So, you know, you're just excited. And because of also a benefit of like the pandemic delay, first week of February is the new Jackass movie. So I'm looking forward to that too.
Yes. That sounds good.
And there's this anime movie called Belle that's coming out, I think, the same day as Scream. So that's also, but then March and April are really like when you mentioned Sandra Bullock. She's gonna be in this movie called The Lost City, which looks terrible, but it's just that all these movies that are coming out in March and April are just weird. They're just really strange films. Like there's 2 ones in particular actually that stood out to me, or maybe 3 actually. One with Nick Cage, which is the unbearable what is it, weight of talent or something, which is him playing Nick Cage. So I'm curious about that movie, that meta movie. And then there's another movie called Old Gold Brick, I think is the title, with Oscar Isaac, and it's kind of a weird, like I guess it's about a guy like getting involved with an author's life and all these bizarre things happen. And then the first like A24 like major release is this movie with Michelle Yeoh called Everything Everyone All at Once. And it deals with like the ideas of a multiverse and all of that. So that's fascinating. So you know, there's these movies coming out that to start the year, which already have me excited. So
well, shoot. Well, I'm excited. Like, I definitely think, you know, it will be fun to kind of keep this going throughout the year. We just have to figure out a pace that works. Like, it definitely would be fun to cover both an old movie and a new movie, and maybe we go back and forth, like however it kind of works out.
Yeah, so, I mean, I was even thinking of doing an episode where we watch each other's favorite movies. So you watch my favorite movie and I watch your favorite movie, and then we'll talk about it.
That sounds good. Yeah. So the kind of ideas that we have floating out there, is to like switch off or to kind of cover each other's favorite films, and then we'll come back and talk about it. We talked about movies that you've seen that you recommend that I haven't seen. And then we talked about maybe doing like a Kurosawa run or something.
Yeah.
So we can talk offline about what we'll do next. But what's a good pace? Like, do you think we can do one episode a month? Do you think we could do 2 a month? Would that be pushing it? I guess it kind of depends on each month.
Yeah. Yeah, I'd be down for 2 a month. I think we, because I mean, we also have to take the time to watch these things. So, so I would say 2 a month is not a lot to ask.
I think that's doable. And if we're late or whatever, it doesn't matter. So it's fine.
Yeah, we're not on a schedule.
Yeah, exactly.
So, I'm not at this point where everybody's asking where have you gone.
Exactly. So let's aim for 2 a month, and then we'll hopefully get at least 1 a month.
Yeah.
All right.
And we already have 1 in the can with this one.
Here we go, baby.
Perfect.
And this was a mega one. So I guess the last piece of business, do we want to try to come up with a name?
That's the tough part. I mean, you floated this idea of cinnamon, which I like. And I looked it up. I haven't seen a podcast with that name.
Cinnamon?
Yeah, cinnamon.
Yeah, it's unclear. It's like if I Google it, like I don't necessarily see it if I search it in iTunes, but if you Google it, something comes up. So it's like I definitely don't want the cinnamon, hot on our path, but I do like that name.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I mean, just speaking from experience of like taking a podcast name that already was out there, like I think it's kind of like a what do they call that when something Winnie the Pooh happened recently, when it enters public domain. Like I feel like if your podcast has been dormant for years and you haven't done a new episode, like that title is up for grabs.
Yeah, okay, good.
Yeah, so you have to keep it going in order to have that name, unless of course they've copyrighted it or whatever, then cross the bridge when we get there, because I know some podcasts who have pivoted and like have changed their name midway through. It's like we don't have to put as much pressure on ourselves to really, this is the name, we got to stick with it and all that. So
exactly. I mean, if we want to keep it in the same kind of universe as Filipino time, it could be cinnamon, with the emphasis on the back half.
Sure.
The only other option that we kind of threw out, I mean, besides terrible ones, is Carlo's Way. I don't know like how much you're trying to really like brand yourself out there and get your name out there.
I mean, the whole thing is just it's just I'm not really a narcissist, and it's a little bit
on the nose.
Yeah, so
right,
yeah, that's the only thing about it. Like I would prefer actually, I like titles where it's named after somebody that doesn't exist. Kind of thing. Like that's more fun to me. Like I can't think of a podcast off the top of my head, but like something like that where it's more indirect.
Right.
Yeah, because I do find it amusing, but it's just, I guess because it's my name, it's just, I don't know. That there is a part of me that doesn't really like the spotlight on me.
Yeah.
So, I prefer to be in the background.
All right. Well, all right. Well, we'll keep troubleshooting it, but it's sounding like it might end up being cinnamon.
Sure. Yeah.
Sure.
I'm down with that.
All right. Well, I guess we'll sign off until next time.
All right.
Thank you, Carlo.
Next time. Yeah. Thank you, Steve.